Alright, hello guys. Today we're going to do some object-oriented programming in Java. To start, I have uploaded all the code for today's videos to a specific GitHub for this class. I've called it 2SO3 Demos, and I'll put a link to it down below. Both projects are here, and you can clone them. If you guys are not familiar with GitHub, you can clone them or do a quick Google search to figure out how to do that, or you can just download the direct zip here. You can also look at the code directly from your web browser. So let's actually get started with some of the code. This first video, is probably going to be a little slower than the rest, as I just want to get some stuff out of the way and make sure everybody's on the same page with classes, and then we can quickly run through classes, or abstract classes at interfaces. This will assume that you know methods and just general stuff about Java. Not too much, not more than what you could learn in like a 10-15 minute Google search. So we have a main class right here. This is going to be the main class that we're going to build this first demo off of. We're going to build some classes that sort of describe a book, just a general book with pages. This is going to be obviously the main method that runs it all. It is sitting inside of a class. The class is called demo main. Now we're going to create some other classes in other files. You can create classes, multiple classes in the same file. This is not recommended because stuff gets kind of messy, but you can do it. You just copy this first line here, change it to private, change your name, and put it basically down here. But ignoring that for now, let's jump in and create a class. So if you come over here to your source package and right click, new class. Now before you click on it, you can see underneath there's interface and enum. These are the other two types that we're going to be dealing with later. So if we just go class for now, we can name it. So let's name this page. So we've created a new class and a new file that class is sitting in. Now this class doesn't have a main method, so it cannot be run directly. You have to call this class from the main method. So let's start putting some stuff in this class that we're going to need. It's a page, so let's start with dimensions. All pages must have a dimension. We're going to name it quite simply int x and int y. Those will describe the dimensions of the page. Now, we have some variables in the page, and that's great. So we need to set them, though. So there's two ways we can do it. I'm going to show you both. For this page, it's going to be best to use something called a constructor. So constructor calls when you instantiate a class. Let me show you what I mean by this. If we come here, I can create a string like this. And there's a new string, just like that. Fantastic. But it is also completely valid for me to go like this. There's no problem with that, as long as I spell string correctly. Now this right here, the new string, you are creating a new object of a string. We're going to talk about a bit more about this later. So if you don't know exactly what I mean, that's fine. But basically, if you think about it, if you want to think of it like string is a type of container. String is a type of box or a tub. When you create a new string, you are getting a new box and you're putting something in it. Specifically, you're creating a new box and you're putting a variable in it called test, or with the value test. So let's see how we can do this for page. So if I come here, if I go page, and what I'm doing here is I press Control Space. Control Space is the hotkey in Eclipse to get sort of auto suggestions. I can come to the second one, and it will auto-complete the constructor for me. So all I've done is gone public page, which is the name of the class. has to be typed properly, like it's case sensitive, and then open close parentheses. So what can we do here? We can set the x and y variables from here. So let's see how we do this. I'm going to go int x, int y. So what I've done is I've declared two new variables that are local only in the context of this method. Only in this method here do these x and y variables exist. Therefore, if I go like this, x equals 3, this only overrides this x variable. It does not override this x variable. And that's good. That's what we want. Now, what we can do is we can set this x variable like so. This dot x equals x. For those of you familiar with Python, which everybody should be, that's the same as typing self.x equals x. So we're going to do the same thing for y. So what we've done is we have created a constructor that sets two variables inside of a class. So now if we come back here, I can go page, test page equals new page. And again, I press Control Space to get these auto suggestions that tell me what kind of stuff I can pass to page. So it's saying I can take an int x and an int y. That's exactly what I want. So I can go 1, 2. And now I've passed that data in. Now, let's see what else we can do on page. So if I go test page and then press dot, let's see what I can do. I can see my x and y, and I can see a bunch of methods. Now these methods are just generic methods that any object can have or will have on them. Sorry. So let's see what we can do about this x and y, because we don't really want somebody to set the x and y variables after the page has been created, because you can't exactly change a page's size once it's in a book. So what can we do about that? Well, if I come back here to page, we can see the constructor has this public in front of it. This is called an access modifier. Now there's 3 access modifiers that you basically need to know about. I'm just going to type them out here. There's public, there is private, there is protected, and on a sort of separate field, there you can also do things like final and static. These are not the same. These are not in the same realm as public, private, and protected, but they are also modifiers. So final means that the variable can't change. So if I put a final here, x will always remain the same. So what does public do? Public obviously means anybody can access it, so any other class is able to see this method. Protected means that only methods from within the same class can see the method. Protected is only classes that are in the same package, that's this guy right here where it says default package, is able to see the methods. Now, if you do not declare public, private, or protected, in Java, it assumes you want public. So right here, when it says just int y, this is actually saying public int y. It just assumes that. So that's public, private, protected, and final. Now static. Static means it's a method that is not instantiable. It does not come with the object. So what do I mean by that? If I make this guy static right here, okay, now I'm going to have to comment this line out for a second because it's really not going to like what I've done, and I'll explain why. If I come back here and just type page dot, I can now see X. I can't see anything else because nothing else is static, but I'm able to access the variables or methods without actually creating an instance of that object. It's exactly the same as if you go integer dot parseInt. So parseInt is a static method. In the class integer, there is a method called parseInt, and it has the access modifier static, which allows you to access it without creating a object of integer. Okay? So let's come back here. We don't want this to be static. We want it to be private because we don't want anybody to mess with it. And we can also chuck in a final just for good riddance. Now, that's great. But we've now put these variables inside the page, inside this box, this holder. But we need a way to get them out, because if they're private, it means I can't come over here and go test page dot. They're no longer there. Okay? So what I have to do is I have to create something called a getter. There's two general method types. One's called a getter and one's called a setter. They do what you think. One sets and one gets. So we're going to create two getter methods, two methods that return a variable, and it's going to be for x and for y. So the convention here is to just go public int get x, and then return x. Public int get y, and return y. Now, here are your two methods, and they will get your variables. So let's just do a quick demo of our code. So if I come here and I go system, and I go test page, get x. Now it should print a 1. Let's see what happens. And we have a 1. Perfect. So you have now written your first class in Java. This is just a very basic class, just to hold some data. Classes are basically the best way to code in almost all languages because it keeps everything nice and neat and allows you to store data together and then create methods on those objects that do certain tasks. If you think of it very much like an object in real life, a phone, for instance. A phone can make a call, you can press a button, you can hang up. All of these are functions. They're actions you can do on a phone. So a class is a object, is a something that allows you to do actions on it. We all just did a matrix project, so if you were going to do that same project in an object-oriented manner, instead of creating methods like getDeterminate and you have to pass in an array or a two-dimensional array, you would have a class that holds a two-dimensional array as a field, and then a method that says getDeterminate, and it just returns the determinate, and it makes a determinate based off the data model held within inside the class. And classes are basically no different than any other class in Java. So you can do whatever you want with them. You can turn them into an array. You could have an array of pages, as we'll see later. You could have a list. And yeah, that seems to about wrap it up for the very first video. As I said, this one was a bit slower and a bit more basic because I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page with the concepts of classes. I hope it was enjoyable to some extent, and I will see you in the next one.